All right, everyone. Well, I am happy to welcome you all to Live with the Hive. Thank you to all our veterans who have joined, and thank you to all of the Hive members, and especially thank you to those who are representing VI22. Thank you for joining the call with us. Just a few housekeeping notes. We do have a question and answer session scheduled later in the presentation or call. So if you have a question, please add it to the chat. Sonal is going to be sort of moderating the chat. And then when we get to that section, she'll ask our presenters the questions. Additionally, if we don't get to your question, please feel free to reach out to us at info@beesknees-wellness.com, and we will try and answer everything that you have via email if we don't get to you. And with that, I think that's all of our housekeeping. Very happy to have you all. As I said, thanks again for joining us in your either evening or late afternoons. I'm going to hand it over to Cherissa Jackson now. She is our Chief Medical Consultant at Bee's Knees Wellness, and she has a lot to go over. Oh, goodness. Yes. Slides are dancing. Okay, here we go.
Okay, awesome. So like she mentioned, my name is Cherissa Jackson. I am a retired Air Force nurse. I am a survivor of 4 deployments. I'm known as America's combat nurse. I was in Iraq twice, and I was actually in Afghanistan as well. I am a true veterans advocate. I'm also a survivor of PTSD. So I have been an advocate and a spokesperson for anyone dealing with post-traumatic stress, not as just a veteran, but anyone in the community who had issues, mental health issues, and have been diagnosed with PTSD. I've been in the military for 23.5 years and 14 days. I can actually get it down to the seconds if you needed me to. And it was the best decision that I've made for my life. And I encourage anyone who's looking for purpose and passion, and if the military is your route, definitely take it. It was the best thing that I've ever could have done for my own particular career. So with that being said, we're going to get into what we're going to be discussing today, which is a lot around mental health. So with next slide, we'll get into some statistics, some mental health statistics across America. And when we discovered this statistics, I was just like, oh my goodness, this country needs help. 1 in 5 adults in the US experience mental health illness each year. That's over 50 million people. So when you think about that stat, if you have friends, and I'm sure we all do, 1 in 5 of your friends are experiencing some type of mental health illness. And we'll go over the 3 that we're going to talk about, which is stress, anxiety, and PTSD. Another stat says that more than 40% of US adults with a mental health condition received no treatment last year. Stigma and lack of resources are keeping people from getting help. And this is so important because the stigma around mental health still exists. And even for myself, when I was dealing with my own PTSD symptoms of anxiety and depression, I didn't let anyone in my command know or my family know that I was dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder. So I suffered in silence, and I didn't get the treatment that I probably should have gotten back in 2005 when I came back from Iraq the first time. But not only that, coming from the Black community, we don't seek out treatment for mental health. We say we're going to pray it away, or we're going to go to church, we're going to talk it out. And even in our own community, mental health is stigmatized, which is preventing a lot of people of color from getting the help that they deserve and the help that they need to live their best lives. So again, this statistics is huge. 40% of people are out here suffering and they're not getting treatment. So we're going to talk about where Bees Knees Wellness will come into play with that as an alternative route, as an alternative medicine for those people who are suffering from mental health and the stigma surrounded by this condition. Anxiety disorder affects 19% of the population, making it the most common mental health concern. And I'm sure everyone has come in contact with someone who's dealt with anxiety or has anxiety. And we'll get into what those symptoms are for anxiety, but that's huge. Out of all the mental health conditions out here, Anxiety is 19% of what the population suffers from. 62% of CBD users report using it to help with their anxiety, depression, and stress, which is why this plant is so important. It's efficacious for mental health challenges like anxiety, depression, and PTSD. So take note of that 62% of the community is using this plant as a way to treat their mental health condition, and they're thriving. Next slide. So let's talk about those three conditions, right, that I just mentioned: stress, anxiety, and PTSD. So what exactly are those conditions? And I'm not going to sit here and read exactly what these terms are, but you know what stress is, right? A lot of us suffer from stress. For me, I say to people all the time, stress is like that silent killer, kind of like elevated blood pressure. And people are walking around here with an elevated blood pressure, never been treated for hypertension, and they're not treated for hypertension until they are in the ER because now they've had a condition, they felt their heart racing, they're thinking they're having a heart attack. But stress is such a chronic condition, and it can either be physical or mental. And with stress, because for me, it's that silent killer, there are people walking around not even thinking stress is attributing to their health, and it really, really does. Stress can cause you to gain weight, which when you gain weight, it helps you to have that elevated blood pressure. And you have that elevated blood pressure, it can lead to heart disease. Many people with stress have diabetes. And of course, when you're stressed, you have mental disorders because stress can lead to depression. So it's like a domino effect. And it's one of those conditions that you can control. I believe self-stress is self-inflicted because you can have control of your stress level by doing things that can decrease your stress. That doesn't require medication sometimes. You can relieve your stress by going to the gym. You can relieve your stress by meditating. You can relieve your stress by just going to therapy. So it's one of those things that you can certainly take control over yourself, and it doesn't have to be self-inflicted. Anxiety. I'm sure you all know someone or even yourself who may suffer from anxiety. It's almost like having those panic attacks. You're always anxious. You can't sit still. I'm surely one of those people that can't sit still and haven't for many years. And I was always wondering, why can't I sit still? Why is my mind always racing? Why am I always on hyper alert? It's because of my anxiety. And just like stress, anxiety can lead to mental health issues like depression. It can lead to a lot of people having insomnia because they're always anxious and they're always moving and they're always nervous. And so if you're not getting enough sleep, then again, that can attribute to other mental health issues such as depression. And of course, as I mentioned in my intro, PTSD is one of those mental health conditions that is prompted by some type of trauma. And PTSD does not have to be because you've been to war like I've been to war 3 times. It could just be because of some type of traumatic event. That can be a car accident. That can be, God forbid, you have a sexual assault. It can be anything that's caused you trauma. That's when you can be diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. But one PTSD victim is not the same as another person suffering with PTSD. My PTSD shows its head with insomnia. I have trouble sleeping. Why do I have trouble sleeping? I have trouble sleeping because I still can see some of the soldiers that I took care of while on the battlefield. And so it's important to me that I get good sleep because in order for me to function properly, I need to be able to get good rest. But PTSD can show its head from insomnia, hypervigilance. I hate being in crowds because I'm always excited about the amount of people that is around me. I'm always looking for exits. So I'm always hypervigilant and I'm always hyper aware of what's happening. And so for many veterans who actually went to Iraq and Afghanistan, they come back with post-traumatic stress, just like I did. And some seek help and some don't. Next slide. So let's talk about the veteran community. That's my bread and butter. That's who I am. That's who I advocate for. And so as we're talking about post-traumatic stress and trauma, we see here that 20% of veterans actually struggle with suicidal thoughts. And last month, September, was Suicide Prevention Month. And for those of you who are on the call today, you may not know, but veterans are taking their life at a rate of 22 a day, but reports have shown and have come out that that rate has increased to almost 40 a day. So as we're sitting here talking today, there's a veteran, he or she, who may be contemplating taking his or her life to suicide because they're not coping with, they're not getting treatment for, they don't know where to go for their PTSD or for their mental health challenges of anxiety, stress, and of course, like I said, trauma. So it's important. That is a very significant statistic because our veterans were the ones that put their lives on the line, just like I did. And for that number to be that high, that says we as a country is not doing a service to them. So it's important that we provide resources to them. It's important that we provide alternative medicine to them, which is where Bees Knees Wellness comes into play as an alternative to the opioids that veterans are given, to the pharmaceuticals that the veterans are given. So there are other people who also suffer from trauma. And most of you know that during COVID, of course, the healthcare workers were on the front line, taking care of a lot of people, and a lot of people, didn't make it coming out of COVID. So they're suffering from that trauma, and they are suffering with the stress and the PTSD of COVID. So they too, you've seen an uptake of them taking their lives as well, because they don't know how to cope with their own PTSD. Next slide. So again, getting into a little bit more about veterans and PTSD, we know that 15 to 20% of veterans experience PTSD symptoms. And in the community, it could be, again, because of combat trauma. It could be because of lack of post-deployment support. And that's very important to understand. When I came back from my multiple deployments, I didn't have anyone ask me, Cherissa, are you suffering from PTSD? Cherissa, do you have PTSD? And as a nurse, I knew what those symptoms were and are, and I still didn't raise my hand and say, yes, I'm suffering from post-traumatic stress. I actually treated the soldiers for post-traumatic stress while I was suffering myself. And they actually did a disservice to me because all they asked me to do was to fill out a questionnaire when I came back. And of course, most veterans are not going to say, yes, I'm suffering from trauma because of the stigma. And hopefully over the years, that stigma is no longer there and veterans are speaking up so that they can get the help that they need while they're in uniform. Again, stigma within the mental health space. Therapy is good. Therapy is not bad. And for most people, if you just accept what therapy can do for you and they go for that first appointment, they realize, oh my goodness, why haven't I done therapy years ago? And this is an important fact because we're seeing that even in children, in middle school children, they're having challenges with mental health. I had the privilege of actually going to a middle school and actually doing a talk about mental health and PTSD in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade community. And what was so interesting about that is that these kids are walking around saying that they're okay, but they're not. And they're suffering from things at home, suffering from things at school. And so it's important for us to dismiss the stigma about mental health and make it okay to not be okay. And I know that's cliche, people say that all the time, but it is so important to give people permission to say, I'm not okay today. I am a little depressed. I'm a little anxious because of what's going on at home. I'm a little anxious about my health. And by doing that, you make it common. You normalize that people are having some challenges and it's okay to have those challenges. In that talk, I was telling, having these kids, repeat back to me, it's okay to not be okay. And after my presentation, a young girl came up to me and her father was in the military. And she said, thank you so much for telling me that. I'm gonna go home and tell my dad that because I see him suffering. I see that he's sitting on the couch, depressed. And so it's important that we all play a part in changing the perspective of mental health. And of course, lack of resources. We have the VA as our main resource for veterans, and the VA is doing a better job in providing resources for us. But we have to also, outside of the VA, as a community, provide a helping hand to our veterans who may be suffering. And be prepared to not just say to us, thank you for your service, but ask the question, how can I help you? And be prepared for that answer and offer that hand to a veteran who may need some support. Mental health challenges after service often go untreated. That is such a great statement. There's so many of us that are walking around who was never diagnosed with PTSD because we were afraid to report it, and we're not getting the help that we need. So it's important that we talk about this more in the community, and we have advocate groups like VI22 that we'll get to meet here in a little bit, that is actually out here doing some great work in the veteran space as it relates to mental health and providing different alternatives and different resources for veterans suffering from PTSD. Next slide. Now I have the pleasure of actually passing the torch to my colleague and the founder and Chief Product Officer, Marilee, and she'll take it from here.
Thank you so much, Cherissa. What a meaningful personal story. Thank you for sharing that with us. You talk about the stigma, and it's deeply entrenched, and it's been deeply entrenched with cannabis as well, as we all know. Can we please go to the next slide? So what is CBD? CBD is a part of the cannabis sativa plant, and all of our products are made with hemp that is declared federally legal. It has 0.3% or less THC in it. For those of you who don't know, the plant has just hundreds of components to it. And CBD and THC are the top two that we always hear about, but there are so many others. So our bodies actually produce cannabinoids. We have an endocannabinoid system. And it's a system of signals and receptors that help bring our body into balance. And so when we're feeling stress, or we're feeling tired or hungry, or we have pain, that's a signal that your body is giving you that things are not in balance. And what's beautiful about CBD is when you supplement with it, it helps to bring your system back into balance. And so that's just a general view of how CBD can help alleviate symptoms. Next slide, please. So how can it help? One of the things I wanted to tell you is that anxiety and stress is the second leading reason why people turn to CBD. Stress, the stress hormone is robust sometimes, and CBD can help reduce cortisol levels. It can help with anxiety by increasing serotonin and dopamine. Those are your feel-good hormones. And it's been shown in studies to help with hypervigilance, what Cherissa had talked about earlier, to help with nightmares, and to help by reducing flashbacks. Next slide, please. So why is this a good thing for us? It's non-addictive. It doesn't have a lot of side effects, and it is a wonderful alternative to pharmaceuticals. And, you know, some people say that cannabis is a gateway to other things, but others of us will say that it's the gateway to going off of prescription medications. And the nice thing about it is it's very flexible. There are different methods of use. You can take it as tinctures or gummies. You can apply it topically for pain and relaxation. And so I feel like if it could even help you a little bit to manage your stress, and couple that with some of the other things that Cherissa was mentioning, like exercise or talking to people or socializing or nature bathing, which is a fun thing that we have been doing in our household, and just going out for a walk, or petting a dog, or anything that you can do to just take the edge off. But this CBD really does help a lot in uplifting moods, in helping you to sleep better, and helping to manage your stress in general. So with that, I will turn it back over to Cherissa. You're mute.
Oh, Cherissa, you're on mute.
There we have it. I'll repeat what I just said. I think it's so important that people really understand it, the efficacy of CBD and how it's really changing and saving the lives of so many people who are suffering from different mental health challenges. So thank you so much for explaining that. And for the mere fact that it's not addictive like the opioids and a lot of these pharmaceuticals with those side effects, that's huge. And so thank you so much for definitely expounding on that. But right now, what I really want the community to know and introduce the community to is to a partner of ours, VI22, that last month, September, as I mentioned, was Suicide Prevention Month. We partnered with them and we wanted to show our support for a veteran nonprofit. And this was the group that we supported, VI22. We actually had them here with us today to talk about their initiatives, who they are, what impact they're having in the community. And so with that being said, what we did was we actually gave 22% discount off of our products to military personnel last month. And a percentage of all of those sales actually went to VI22. So congratulations to VI22 for being our very first recipient. And with that being said, I would like to introduce the community to VI22's CEO. I know Eric Stamper is the founder, and he's not on the call today, but we do have our president, Ms. Shanita, and we also have one of the board members, Ms. Renee, here. So whoever wants to start and tell the community who you are, who VI22 is, what's the significance of 22, and your impact that you're having in the community.
So my name is Shanita Lewis, and I am the Executive Director of Veterans Initiative 22. We are a nonprofit organization whose mission is veteran suicide prevention. And the way that we do that is we meet our mission is through affordable access to medical cannabis. So one of our main programs here in the state of Maryland, where we're located, is that we offer free medical certifications for veterans, free cannabis card certifications. Our nurse practitioner and executive board member, Renee Reisinger, who is on the call, is a certifying provider, and she is the one that offered so generously to do those free certifications. Veterans Initiative 22 is so very lucky to have her and her husband, Richard Bond, both on our executive board. Richard is a Vietnam veteran. He was in the National Guard. But I will let Renee give his history more than I will when she begins to speak. But so our mantra is "We Care," which stands for Cannabis Advocacy, Resources, and Employment. So as I stated, we help get affordable access to medical cannabis. We also lobby on behalf of any sort of veteran bill or cannabis bill that may come to the table, whether statewide or federally. Last week, we were just at the Validated Voices Summit. We helped co-sponsor that with Americans for Safe Access, where we met with our elected officials and spoke about rescheduling of cannabis. So we're really glad to see that cannabis is going to be rescheduled soon. The DEA meeting is December 2nd for anyone that may be interested in that. Veterans Initiative 22 plans to be there. Whether we are able to testify or not, we're not sure about now, but we will still be boots on the ground when they are there that day. Everybody's speaking to the court. So we wanted to thank Bees Knees Wellness for their donation. It will definitely go towards saving veteran lives. So what we do is we bridge the gap. And thanks to sponsors like Bees Knees Wellness, we're able to continue to do that, continue to save lives, and continue to fight for veterans. So again, we want to give our heartfelt gratitude and thank you to Bees Knees Wellness for choosing us. We appreciate it more than we could say. And with that, I will let Renee speak. I know that Renee was traveling, so let me make sure that she's able to talk right now. Renee, are you there, hon?
Yes, can you hear me?
Sure
Yes.
can.
Okay, great. So thank you, Bees Knees and Cherissa, for everything that you've done for veterans in our organization. And like everyone who has spoken said, I think veteran health is so important. And especially I think with older veterans like my husband, you know, that mental health is not something that they really like to speak about. And there's a big stigma, I think, especially with the older veterans, to use cannabis. But my husband, he was a tough nut to crack with cannabis because it had just been drilled into him, you know, you would lose benefits. But he had a nice story. He had two rather major surgeries and he was prescribed opioids. But fortunately, he was open to using cannabis. And through both of those surgeries, he only used cannabis post-op. And now he's a big proponent of cannabis. And I like to say that's one less opioid addicted veteran. So I think conversations like this are very important. And thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you so much, Renee. Thank you so much, Shanita.
Well, one of the things I wanted to pop in and say, I know I'm speaking out of turn, but one of the best things that happens for me when I'm working with people in my store or through Bees Knees Wellness is when they go off prescription meds. And I love to hear that your husband took the leap into the leaf and found that it really helped him. I mean, that is so meaningful and powerful. And just conversations like these and with other people, it just helps to erase that stigma. And the other thing is we will have the veterans discount in perpetuity on our website. So that will always be available to veterans. And
Thank you.
So thank you so much. And Renee is actually being modest, Marilee. She talks to me a lot about the patients that she encounters, and she has lots of stories of other, not just veterans, but patients that she's treated and she's done care plans on to help them come off of their high blood pressure medications. Yeah. So she has, we could probably have just a webinar on the people that Renee has helped come off of their prescription drugs because of the work that she does. And she really cares. And for her to have that nurse practitioner certification and for her to, just like me, have graduated. As a matter of fact, 3 of us here on this call graduated from MCST, which is the Medical Cannabis Science and Therapeutics program here in Maryland with our master's degrees. So she can probably tell you some other stories besides her husband, but her husband is incredible. And to know that we've saved another life using this plant, you know, it's our life's work.
Yeah, it's remarkable. Thank you for all that you do, all of you. It's truly impressive.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your support. Without the help of businesses like yours, we wouldn't be able to continue to fight for veterans. So, you know, we're forever thankful, truly, for you and you just reaching out and finding us. And thank you, Cherissa, for setting that up so much. Thank you. We truly appreciate it. And I just wanted to say there's another graduate on the call as well. I noticed our colleague, Dr. Hernandez, Carlos Hernandez, is on the call. So thank you, Dr. Hernandez, for coming in and watching tonight. I appreciate it. It's good to see you.
Wonderful.
Great. So there's actually no questions at this time in chat. So maybe things were covered. That's great. But as Haley mentioned at the beginning of the call, if questions do come up, please email us at info@beesknees-wellness.com. Appreciate that. And that concludes our call today.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, everybody. That was really moving. I live with a veteran who struggles with mental health as well. So this was a very moving presentation. And I just wanted to say thank you and appreciate all that you do. And I can't say this enough, but I just really love working with Bees Knees because they have these kinds of initiatives. And it's important for me personally to be able to work with a company who cares about other people. So thank you all for joining us this evening. And with that, I guess we'll give you some time back to your evening unless anyone has any questions. Again, you can email us. We're happy to answer whatever we can. Even we could have Marilee make product recommendations because she's our queen bee. So whatever you guys need, please reach out.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you
everyone.
all.
Have a good night.
Have a great one. Appreciate it.
Good night, everyone.